From the News Channel 5 Network, this is MorningLine.
Here we go. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on MorningLine. Nick Beres here on a Tuesday, and we've got a good show on tap for you. I always say that, and this one's interesting to, I think, give us all a chance to learn a little bit more about a new organization here. It's a registered charity, nonprofit that is there to help veterans when they come back from service overseas, wherever it is they may be. They come back, and there are a lot of groups like this that do terrific work, not necessarily just for injured veterans, but a lot of veterans as they go back through the transition, looking for others to understand what they're going through. Now, this comes at it from a different angle because we're talking about Veterans Adventure Group. What does that mean? What's it all about, and how does it work? We're going to talk about that this morning with two guests, and we're going to open up the phone lines for you as well. Let's face it, we're in this area here where there are a lot of folks, a lot of veterans, especially up from the Fort Campbell area. If you have thoughts or questions, I want you to join in the conversation. We've got the number on the screen, 737-7587, as we learn more about Veterans Adventure Group. We have the president and founder of this organization that the plan is to make this national, but Justin Matichek?
Yes, Justin. Yep.
Did I get it right?
You did, yep, you got it.
Okay, just want to make sure. Justin, it's nice to have you on. It's a pleasure having you on.
We appreciate you having us here.
And you've brought Mike McGuire with you as well. Hi, Mike. Good to have you on. Both of you are veterans.
Correct.
And well, why don't we start with you, Justin? Just give us the basics. Veterans Adventure Group. I assume this means veterans going on really cool adventures.
Ultimately, yes. But what we do is really cool. So we restore teamwork and purpose by building, training, and equipping small teams of veterans to thrive in extreme environments.
Okay, and this, all right. Now, I would just think by definition, veterans, after serving, have already thrived, hopefully, in extreme environments. Nothing more extreme than being in a battle zone.
No, exactly, and that actually brings up a great point. So, as soldiers, we're trained to thrive in these chaotic and extreme environments. And then you get out of the military, and you just don't have that environment anymore.
Okay.
And it's kind of frustrating because that's when you're at your prime, is when you're in those kinds of environments. So why not bring that environment back to veterans so they can feel like they're kind of on top of the world again, put them in that environment they thrive in. And extreme sports tend to take place in extreme environments, whether you're falling from an airplane at 14,000 feet, 120 miles an hour, or you're climbing a mountain, or scuba diving 100 feet under the surface. Like that environment, it's chaotic. It's kind of crazy. Things you do matter again. The decisions you make. If you make a mistake, people can get hurt. People can die. But as veterans, that's our environment. We love that environment where you're making decisions that matter again. And it's very empowering to be part of a team that everyone has to be on the same level. Everyone has to pull their weight, because if you have anyone that's not, ultimately bad things happen. And so putting veterans back in that environment is such a relief, and it kind of gets veterans. I kind of like to say, you get the high school quarterback syndrome kind of, where a lot of veterans, they kind of, talk to them and they'll tell you about their glory days back in Iraq kicking indoors. And it's like, well, what are you doing now? And it's usually they're not as excited about it. They'll get all excited talking about what they used to do, and you talk about what they're doing now, and it's kind of more of a sad conversation. It's like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, there's so much going out there. There's so much you can still do. And by getting them out there and empowering them to do these extreme sports, you kind of see that life come back to them. So they're like, oh wow, like I can still do this stuff. Like I still have that capability.
That is such an interesting thought about this. I've done plenty of stories. As I said, we have Fort Campbell here, and we all know the tragic numbers of suicide for veterans who come back, and making the transition back, and the reasons why. Maybe sometimes you always hear it's. Part of it is what you've experienced over there, and it can be some awful stuff. But then on top of it, the transition back. And I didn't know if it had to do with maybe that adrenaline that all of a sudden you're missing, in addition to having trouble finding a job that fills that void. Like, for instance, when you came back, what did you deal with? Can you give us a little bit about what you did overseas, and then what the transition was like for you initially when you came back stateside?
Yeah, definitely. I've been deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. And upon coming back from both of those, like you said, there is a void of adrenaline rush. Because you're in a chaotic environment, and military veterans, all military are trained to be, I call it comforting chaos. To be able to make that split-second decision. And when you come back to the civilian world, there's just nothing to fill that void. And unfortunately, myself included at one time, a lot of veterans try to find it in the bottom of a bottle or something like that.
So you felt some depression, anxiety that came with coming back? I was actually
at one point, diagnosed with PTSD. And had my troubles with that. And since joining with the Veterans Adventure Group and filling that void, and getting with a a group of guys, or even civilians. That's the great thing about the Veteran Adventure Group is it's not just all military.
Oh, okay.
You're out there doing it with civilians. It bridges that gap.
Gotcha.
And it gives you that sense of team and really helps you, fill that void in your life again. I've actually came off all my PTSD medicine. Really? I'm not taking any of it. And that's been, about a year now since I've started with the group.
Because this has filled that gap for now.
Exactly.
This means and these are recreational activities now that as you said, they're adventure. That helps you then function in your other aspects of life, be it your day-to-day job, your home life, and all of that, because you have, what is it, an outlet, or there's a gap being filled?
I call it extreme therapy.
Okay. So again, you touched on some of the activities. I mean, literally, there's only so many, right? Well, extreme stuff you can do. I mean, what are we talking about?
But it keeps growing. So, an example, last year we sponsored 2 teams. We did a mountaineering team and a skydiving team here in Nashville. This year we've had so much interest. We got scuba diving teams, we got ultra marathon teams, we have caving and rappelling teams. We have a skydiving team again. We have 3 mountaineering teams this year. And we've kind of had to just put the brakes on things a little bit. We got interest in mountain biking, paragliding, all that other stuff. But
actually, come to think of it, you're right. There's a lot of activities that can be that category.
But ultimately, these sports, the common thread is there is some sort of danger involved. And it does force you to really be in your A game, and it also forces you to be physically fit.
Pictures. Here's some of the photos they're putting up as you're talking, but that's someone jumping out of the plane.
Yeah, that's actually me.
Is that you?
Yeah.
You're doing a head flip coming out, huh? Okay. Wow. All right, so go on. I'm sorry, but we're going to play some of these pictures as you go.
But
that's Mount. By the way, where's that?
That's actually Mount Rainier. So that was our mountaineering team. We went out there last year.
I was reading about it where you said you almost summited, but someone had some altitude sickness.
Yep. So about 400 feet from the summit, one of the guys went down, did altitude sickness, so we had to turn around.
Can't mess with that.
Yeah, but that's one of those cool situations where again, you're there as a team, and you're only as fast as your slowest person in that team, and you kind of take pride in that knowing, we could have made it, but we turned around because that's in the best interest for the team, and the mountain's not going anywhere. We can go back.
And you probably will.
We're actually going back this year. So.
Okay. That's beautiful, beautiful out there. Now, the trips and the ones you describe, many of these types of sports are not cheap. Okay, they take money, and I'm guessing that's part of what this charitable group does then, because not everyone can just afford to go skydiving or to go on a trip to Mount Rainier in Washington.
And that's the thing. So with a lot of these extreme sports, the cost is upfront cost to get into it is very expensive, and that's where it kind of limits a lot of veterans. Like skydiving, that's a few $1,000s to get into it. Not to mention gear, that's another few $1,000s.
Right.
So if we can help veterans kind of get that started. Now our goal is not to take these veterans and hold their hand every step of the way. Like Mike, now that he's got his Class A skydiving license, he's on his own now. But he has several other veterans he's jumping within his team. But they were expected to financially carry that. But now it's only $27 for them to go jump on a plane.
I was about to say we should say that for folks. I've always been told that the initial expense for skydiving is a lot, but the more you do it, the cheaper it gets. Right. And then once you have everything, so you can go up. Let's just say you've got that itch in a couple weekends, and some of your buddies are tied up, and maybe not with this group, but now because of them, you've learned how you'll go jump. Yeah,
I can go jump anywhere in the world that I want to now that I've got my Class A skydiving license, and it's normally, like he said, an average of about $27 per lift ticket.
Not a bad gig. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and another awesome thing about what we do is so we actually donate the required gear to the veterans to keep when they're done. Our goal is to have this fully functional team after they're done working with us. So like our mountaineering team, they get all the gear they need. And so by doing this, not only do we give them a team that's local, they can actually train with weekly, they also have the gear to do it, and they have the training to do it.
Okay.
So now we have this fully functional team that can go and do these sports on their own without having to continually come back to the nonprofit to get that help. And that's our goal, is we make sustainable teams. Is more of a long-term solution, because there's a lot of other groups out there that it looks very similar. Oh, you take veterans on adventures, but the big difference is a lot of these groups, they're doing great work, but it's a very short-term solution. You take a bunch of people from all over the country, you bring them together, you have a great week in Colorado, but then what happens when they go back home? You may have had a ton of fun out in Colorado ice climbing, but if you don't have the gear, you don't have the people, you don't have the training to do it continuously, it's just a vacation. And here at Veterans Adventure Group, we really have no interest in funding the vacation. We want to really give these guys a new skill set so they can go out there and do something long term. Not to mention with that you get a lot more career opportunities. One of the guys in the jump team is actually talking about quitting his job and being a skydiving instructor. He loves it so much, know. And it's cool too. Also as veterans, we often talk a lot about this veteran-civilian gap, And I think in the day-to-day world, you see it pretty profusely. But in these extreme sports, you don't find that gap. And that's sort of like Mike was saying with the skydiving side of it. You know, we go to the drop zone, and yes, there's a lot of veterans already out there jumping. And then they have the veterans in the team. But there's also a lot of civilians out there. But at the end of the day, we all are making that same commitment, and that's a very bonding thing when you're all doing something, you know, very dangerous together, whether it's jumping on a plane, climbing mountains, scuba diving, stuff like that. But it kind of, that whole veteran-civilian gap dissolves. And so not only do you find other veterans in your community, you also find other civilians in your community that you can bond with and do these activities with.
Let's take a break on that note. When we come back, we're going to talk more about that gap and bridging it. And then just, you know, we can take some phone calls. Brian and others, the line's open, 737-7587. If you have questions, just want to know, you know, also, we can educate folks on how they get involved if they want to sign up.
We'd love to.
And how you can help support this this group, which I think, yeah, it's very novel. I've done stories on the groups that go out, like what you said, and they do this one thing where they'll bring them out, especially some of the injured veterans, and fly fishing, and it's wonderful. But then I always wondered, after that great weekend, they go back to their lives, can they build on that? And this is what I guess your group gives them a chance to do.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is pretty cool. All right, we'll take a break. We'll be back with your calls and more of our conversation about the Veterans Adventure Group right after this. Stay with us.